Hello, Scrappy friends. Welcome back to our intermediate go-to design series. If you've been following along, you know that we're taking our 5 go-to designs and we're breaking them up into smaller, more bite-sized type videos that aren't so overwhelming. We could use them as a quick reference. Today we're jumping into the half and half design. You know that this is my favorite as a go-to design, and it's one of the most balanced and beginner friendly and intermediate friendly layouts of our go-to design series. So if you love the symmetry or you want a clean base to build on, then this one is for you. But I do have to say, I'm going to pick up today where we left off in the first video. So if you haven't seen that, I'll link it at the end of this one. You want to go back and watch that. In that video, I showed several different ways that you can take the half and half and just slightly change it, push it down, round the corners, things like that. So first I thought this is going to be really hard to even change this because it is such a basic layout and it has its name for a reason. So it was a bit challenging, but I came up with 3 different variations that will help us to take our half and half design and elevate it up to something more by adding layers, by bringing in some elements as far as embellishment clusters. I'm not going to touch too heavy on tools, but we are going to see how some different tools can affect our half and half as well. Without further ado, let's stop talking and head over to my table and I'll show you what I have in mind. So here's our basic half and half design where we have basically a 6 by 12 inch piece at the top and a 6 by 12 inch piece at the bottom. The first variation that I want to show you is what I'm going to call cut it up. I like to give these little phrases so that we can kind of remember them when we're in a pinch. So this one we're going to cut it up. So I'm going to take these and just cut them into random pieces. Let me show you. So here I have some of the pieces that I cut, and what I'm going to do now is to stagger them off to one side of the layout. Maybe something like this. I won't use all the pieces, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap between just for some visual interest. I'm just going to keep going, and then it'll be something like this, and I would maybe space them out to make them fit within the half of the page. So that's cutting it up. You could also do it if you wanted to just cut up one whole piece, keep it in order. This is great for those story kind of pages where it's a whole motion of going on, but this is really cute too. Just cut it up, kind of takes the eye away from being too big and bold, but I like alternating the pattern. You'll see here I changed it to vertically from the way I had it at first, but with my paper, it wouldn't matter if I turned it back this direction. So just keep in mind the direction of your papers. Okay, let's put it back like this, because how would I bring in some photos? Well, this is a great opportunity to bring in some 2 large photos, and we can do this horizontally like this, and of course, that's what it would look like vertically. So still lots of options. And then, this is our intermediate level, so we're gonna now look at bringing in some photo mats, and in this case, I would bring in a large photo mat and place it right over here. And then maybe some simple embellishing. Let's scoot our mat up just a tad. Give us some room down here to do some embellishing. And remember, I'm just pulling in pieces from my scrap box over here. So I would probably do something like this. This is not about me matching my elements. It's more about just showing you how to use the different design concepts. This would be a great spot for the title. If I wanted to do some journaling, I have some spots right over here. I can handwrite. I could bring in some write-on strips. Something like that would be nice right here. I would probably continue to embellish right around here around my title. So I would bring in maybe a punch from our circle punch, and then just, dip into your tools. I have a leaf and my little embossed flower. You could bring in another embellishment cluster up here, maybe like a flower and a matching flower down here, and maybe a little butterfly. So something like that. You get the idea. So this is how I would arrange this. So now how would I do a second page? Well, this would make a great mirror image. You have all the pieces. They would just be a little bit different. Maybe you would have 3 pieces of the pink plaid and only 2 pieces of the flower. Whatever you had left, you could bring it to the other side and do the exact same thing. If you didn't want to do that, let's do a little more exploring what we can do with a second page. So my concepts with the second page are always the same. If I'm not doing a mirror image or something similar, then I'm trying to bring in the same materials and papers that I used on one side. So here I would want to bring in the floral paper and the plaid paper and maybe even some of the dark green matte paper that I used here. So I would do something like this. We still have the other halves of our papers that we didn't cut into. I think I would probably bring this big plaid piece over here because it's not as heavy as the floral piece. And here right now we just created another half and half design. So our concept is still the same and our eye is picking it up as a half and half. Then I probably would maybe even take a little piece of this and tuck it right under there. This here makes a great area for your photos. I would bring in 3.5 by 5.5 and you can do 2 on top of each other and then maybe use the last part down here for a big journaling box. Now that we've expanded it to 2 pages, we don't need to cram in our journaling. So maybe spread it out. Could even do something like this. That's always nice, kind of rearrange it. This also gives us a nice area for photo placement. So maybe another full-size photo would fit right here, and even a 4x4 photo fits right up there. But now I'm looking at my first page and I'm thinking, let's try something different over here before we get into our second page. Let's change out the background. There's a pretty blue in my pattern paper, so let me bring in a sheet of baby blue and change everything over to this page. It was kind of getting washed out into that white, and I think that that really helps make it pop. Now I don't think I want to do the same over here. You could bring a blue piece over here and maybe only have about a 5-inch piece and make it look like it's just kind of flowing in. I think what I'd rather do is to mat this photo right here. We have plenty of room down here to do that, so that's super nice. And then this photo, you can either do blue to kind of carry that over, but I think this is the opportunity that I want to bring in some of that darker green. And so I'm just looking at what I did on one side and kind of carrying it over to the other. Then I guess the last thing I would do is find a spot over on the right-hand page to do a little bit of embellishing. So let's see, I think I want to move these around like that. I think I like this visually a little bit better because my photos are bigger than my journaling box. Okay, let's bring in some more blue. I would tuck maybe something right around here in that area. I have some more pieces I found in my little collection box here. So I tried to just pull out things that were hopefully gonna match this layout. We could scoot everything over here if we wanted to do another butterfly right here next to our word friends. Let's go ahead and bring in some leaves over here. Okay, once again, I'm getting carried away with the embellishments, but this really is not about embellishing. It's more about the page design concept of the half and half being elevated up to a medium level. So you can keep adding little finishing touches as much as you want, but these would be the 3 areas that I would probably focus on. There you go. First variation, let's cut it up, make it into some strips. And from here, there's probably a lot of more possibilities that we can do, turning them into banners, things like that, giving it a rough torn edge look or a decorative blade from our trimmer. Lots of things we can do with our cut up pieces. But let me clean this up and I'm going to be back with another variation on the half and half intermediate style. Okay, for this variation, I've already have my half and half pages assembled. We talked about how we weld them together by adhering the 2 pieces together with a little piece on the back there. You can go check out that video. I believe I actually have a short video on that as well. This intermediate design concept I'm going to call layer it up. So we have cut it up and layering it up. And it's going to be just like it sounds. We're going to now add some layers on top of our half and half to give our page a little bit more interest. We start with our basic half and half, first begin by covering up the seam right here. That's our first layer. I love doing that. You can see how it just totally changes the layout. That's a 1/2 inch strip just over that seam. Then my next layer I want to bring in is a large block area. This is an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, and I'm going to bring it all the way to the inseam. It's going to be a 1/2 inch down from the top and a 1/2 inch up from the bottom. And I'm going to do that on both sides like this. And that's going to be a great place to house our photos. So I want to use this space, and I'm going to kind of make a grid pattern. So I'll put a full 4x6 up here, another 4x6 down here, 4x3. You could probably even do a 4x4, but I am going to slide this up so that I have some room down here to bring in some layers. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we have right here, we could do another 3x4, and then kind of repeat our grid on the other side. Instead of a 3x4 photo, I still need a place for my journaling. So I could bring in a little 3x4 journaling mat right there. And then maybe I'm gonna move this one over here and bring in a piece here for my title. So here's my title, and I'm going to rest it right there. And now I can bring in a little bit of embellishments. I'm going to embellish here and then do a diagonal embellishment right up here. I'm just going to bring in a couple flowers just to kind of show you how the embellishments can fit on here. And then let's go ahead and bring one up here. I'll tuck it under so it's kind of going out into the paper there. Maybe bring in another flower similar to those, and another flower. Now I want to add in just another type of layer just to demonstrate how we can change this up, because we have this big open space down here. I did that on purpose so that I could bring in some layers. My favorite type of layer to bring in is a banner cut. And I would do something like this. Put the banner down here, have it running over the entire photo mat layer and then into our pattern paper over here, and then one for each side. And you could do one, or you can bring in more paper, and I chose a pattern paper this time. I made a smaller banner that doesn't run as far out, just for some visual interest. And I'll do the same thing on the other side, bringing everything right here to the edge. So like I said, it just gives you a little bit more interest down here. And of course, picking papers that match your design. Another way we can take this particular style and change it up ever so slightly, but yet change how our layout looks in our album, is to change the size of this block. So we have a pretty big block here. So here we go. This is an 8.5 by 9.5 block. We just made it smaller and kind of moved it to the center, so we have much more of the background page exposed. Let's do the same thing over here. So even with the smaller block, we can get on the same amount of photos. Let's bring back in our journaling area and move this one over here. Bring back in our little title spot, and then bring back in our same embellishments. And then maybe up here, we can add a few more elements like that, or even move it to the outside of our grid. So it's basically holding the same amount of photos. We can always change these around, make it even a little bit more different. Our embellishment cluster down there. You can just keep changing it around. So what we lost was we lost that strip down here at the bottom where we did a little bit of decorating as well. So if you wanted to bring in some more pop of color and bring back in those same kind of elements, let's bring our strips back in, but this time let's just put them right underneath our block. So we do have another pop of color right there. So of course I would shorten those banners. I wouldn't need that much paper behind there, but I'm just kind of putting it on there with the props I already had to demonstrate how we could bring in another pop of color right there. And then I would bring in a couple more little pieces to do the same thing on the other side. And there we go. Just some ideas on how you can change up even the variation. We can change to another variation. So there we go. Let me clean this up. I'm going to come back with one more idea. So while I'm away doing that, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask you if you're enjoying this little series of taking our go-to designs and elevating them up to intermediate level designs. Then let me know by leaving me a comment, clicking the like button. Do one, do both. I really appreciate it all. So thank you, and I'll be right back. So here's our last example. We're starting with our half and half design. I'm just starting with a piece of dark wood grain paper back here. Has a little rip right here. So I'm taking my half piece of this beautiful floral paper, so 6 by 12, and I'm going to put it right here off to the side. So what is this third way to elevate up our half and half? That's to bring in our jumbo circle. So I don't have a name for this, so we're just going to call it circling up. We had our cutting up, we had our layer it up, so why not circle it up? So bring in your jumbo custom cutting template and cut a circle. I did just that. I used the jumbo circle with the red blade on the outside, and I created a large circle element. Then I'm going to take half of that and put it over here. So that's the other half of my half and half. So let's go ahead and add our photos. This strip again makes for adding perfect spot for photos. We can put 3 right down the row like that, maybe 1 off into the circle. But if we want to keep our journaling on here along with our photos, probably let's take off a photo, add a journaling box. We could move the journaling box to the center, move the journaling box to the top. So there's ways to change that up as well. Let's leave it in the center and see if we like it. So now, just like before, we're going to elevate this up by bringing in some additional layers. So let's start with layering right on top of the large circle. And for this layer, I used my jumbo circle. I used the red blade on the inside track this time. So the green one was the outside track, and the red one and this blue piece was the inside track. And then there you go. You can see how much that just gave a lot of color and life to our layout. Then of course, bringing in some photo mats. So I probably would mat this photo right here, just because it's probably going to be my focal photo. Then you could always mat these if you wanted to as well, but let's continue on because we do want to create a second page to go with this. So let's bring in our title. We have this title right here, and I feel like that's getting washed up. So let's bring in a little layer piece for that, just a little piece of cardstock to put that up on. And then I would bring in some simple embellishments. So let's see, I have my little slide reel pieces. Those are always fun to work in, and I probably would do something like this. Slide it right in there, and then add a little flower, maybe a little butterfly, and then bring in maybe another slide reel right up here, and another flower, and here's a little blue flower I had in there. So something like that looks super cute. And then how about a little heart? So there we go. We have our half and half, totally different than what we ever imagined with a typical half and half. So how would I make a second page? You should have double the circle cuts, and so you could just mirror image this on the other side, have a big circle element off to the right hand side. But you know I'm going to not want to do that, so let's figure out another way we could get a second page made. So I made a frame style foundation. When I'm making my second page, I'm just trying to bring in the elements I used on the first page. So here you'll see I made a frame out of the pretty floral paper so that it kind of extends over and looks like it's just flowing right into the second page. Put another piece of the wood grain. This one I trimmed down to 11.5-inch square. And I want to back up real quick because for my border here, I didn't use a full sheet and gut it. I actually used little strips. This was the perfect paper that I did strips. So I did 1-inch strips and I adhered them together. And you can see a tiny little seam if you look for it, but who's going to be looking for that? Probably no one. And then I want to bring in my half circle. Probably would put it down here. Maybe I'd have a little bit of the brown showing through or something, but I have it, so I might as well use that. Okay, let's bring in our photos and see. We have room for even bigger photos over here if we want. I would overlap into my circle and then maybe put this one like that. And to continue layering that up, I'm going to bring in a photo mat here to match the other side and kind of help that photo to pop off that page. And then for these, I thought it would be nice to also bring in a photo mat behind, but I'm going to bring in a large block element. So for that one, I'm going just totally rogue with a new piece of pattern paper. Bring in some more of that purple color that we had in our background pieces. I need to bring in another place to do some embellishing, so I probably would slide this photo down, line it up here, bring in a little area up here to embellish, and then bring in another slide reel. That way I have them in all of the areas. Do something like this, one more little flower, and then maybe a little word sticker. And there we go. It could be just that simple, creating with large circle elements. So I have just one more way we can change using a circle. So let me go ahead and remove this side, and I'm going to take this side and I'm going to turn it this way. Don't mind that my little flowers are going the wrong way. So for this example, I want to bring in a little smaller circle. So I'm bringing in my largest circle in our set of 3 from our custom cutting system, and I'm going to do a blue blade on the outside ring, and that's going to give us the biggest circle. I'm going to cut that right in half and put it just like this. And then to add even more layers to this page, we can bring in a little strip of matching pattern paper. This is an 1.5 inches. Put it right here on top of our floral piece, and now tuck that in right like that. So already there's 2 ways within our second variation. Let's bring in some photos. We can bring in some smaller photos, put them right down here, and then maybe a large photo right here, and maybe even a 4 by 4 inch photo just like that, slightly running into our circle element, being a little playful with it tilting off, and everything is kind of touching and cohesive. I probably would bring in like my title right here, or even up here. It can even go up here. Lots of different ways. Bring in some embellishing right down here. And there we go. And the second page, you can use that same idea we just did with the frame style foundation. Again, we can just repeat this. I probably would move on the second page, or make this maybe the second page, and on the first page, bring the circle element to the left-hand side. So just a few ideas there, but there is just one more way we can change this up, because if circles aren't your thing, and I won't go into a lot of detail with this, I'm just going to show this. If circles aren't your thing, feel free to bring in that block element. I think we touched on this a tad on the first video, but maybe this wouldn't be a full size sheet. I would tuck that way under there. Give myself a rectangle instead of a circle, title like that. You can make this as big as you want. It's just adding another layer. So replace the circle with a rectangle. But that is truly it. We are done with our intermediate half and half. Stay tuned. I think our next intermediate level one will be the 2/3, 1/3. But again, give me some time. It does take me a little bit longer to prep these videos because I have a lot of cutting and ideas to kind of get together into the whole video. So thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you. Take care, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.